It's more than halfway through October, so I'm sure that a lot of people already have their story ideas together and maybe their plots planned out. But I wanted to make a video on story ideas just because I did it last year and I feel like I still have a little bit more to say about it. And this is a topic that I love talking about. So before I really start talking about coming up with story ideas, I wanted to say that it is my opinion that ideas are not the most important part of writing. I think that you can have a great idea and have no clue what to do with it. I think the most important things that you need to focus on are your style, your structure, how you structure your plot, your character development. That is what's really going to carry a novel. I'm sure everyone has had that experience when you pick up a book from the store and the story synopsis sounds really exciting or really interesting, and then you read it and it just kind of falls flat. That's because they had a great story idea, but they couldn't follow through with it and make it a well-rounded novel. So anyone can come up with a great story idea. You see it all the time. People recognize what makes a good story because our lives are surrounded by stories. We watch stories, we read stories, we listen to stories, we tell stories. But not everyone is going to be able to take that idea and turn it into a great novel. That's why you have so many books that are on the same idea or based on the same concept. It's because even though it's based on the same idea, the take is completely different. The perspective is different. What they do with that idea is different. And so really what you need to focus on is how you're writing the idea versus the idea itself. But ideas are still fun to come up with and talk about, and it's one of the reasons I love doing this, because I love telling stories. I love hearing stories and reading stories. So it's definitely one of the most exciting parts of it. My number one tip for story ideas when you're coming up with them is to ground it in reality, in the sense that the interactions between the characters, the dialogue, the emotions all ring true with the audience. This is why some fantasy series are really successful. It's because people read them and they recognize different things, like I had a relationship just like this, or I had this conversation with my boyfriend or whatever, but it's in a different world. I think that some fantasy novels go too far and there's nothing familiar, there's nothing for me to really grab onto and connect with, and that's why I don't particularly love reading fantasy novels. But some authors do a really good job of incorporating our human existence into it. And when you're thinking about those realistic relationships and emotions and dialogue, you need to think about your own life. And sometimes it's hard to write about things that are so close to you, but it's gonna be what's most authentic in your book. I've talked before about how I take different experiences from my life and let it inspire a story. When I first started writing, I didn't want to write anything that was too close to my family or myself, because I felt like that felt kind of weird to me. But I was able over time to kind of distance my family from my character, still use those experiences, but not feel like I'm just reliving my past, if that makes sense. I like to take ideas from everywhere though. I can see a billboard and have a story idea, or see something on the news and have a story idea. It's like as soon as I see an image or hear something or read something in my mind clicks and just starts whirring, and an idea forms really, really quickly. And of the ideas that I've gotten from that and written, I think that the story's evolved a lot and it's changed a lot, but that inspiration is still there. The core story is still the same. So you really need to think about what excites you, what confuses you, or what scares you. Some of the best stories have come from that question, what scares you the most? If you think about what scares you the most and you write about it, it can also be really helpful to work through that fear, I've found. One of my biggest fears is death and just the uncertainty of the universe. And by writing about it, I actually have found that I am able to think about it a little bit more. Before, I could not think about it without panicking. And I think that one of the reasons I write so much about death is because it does confuse me and it does scare me, and it's one of those rare things that you know everyone is going to go through, and so everyone is going to be thinking about it throughout their lives, every single person. And that idea just, it fascinates me that we can all share this same anxiety or same, like, we're all gonna experience it, yet we don't really openly talk about it. It's kind of something that you feel alone in. So that is why I end up writing about death a lot. And when you do come up with your story idea and you start writing, make sure that you keep the big things the same. You can play around with little things, like you can add or remove some characters, you can change some settings, you can tweak some of like the minor details, but you want to keep the big things the same. Like, don't change genres in the middle of writing like I have in the past. I have added like a ghost halfway through my story, and all of a sudden it's a paranormal story and not a contemporary young adult story. So that can make it really difficult to work with unless you're really motivated to make it a paranormal story and want to go back and kind of tweak things. But I would say that make sure that you have those big decisions made ahead of time, because you don't want to stray too far from that core idea, because in that core idea is your motivation to write. And that needs to stay because that's what's going to make your book great. So if your story idea is something that you know a lot about, that you have personal connections with, that you feel very strongly about, then that needs to drive the entire novel. And if you tweak with that main idea, then it's going to become more difficult to finish the novel. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story idea from this year. I believe I talked about this idea last year on a video, but it came back up when I was thinking about what I was going to write about this year. So last year was my 10-year high school reunion, which I did not attend, which is fine. I don't feel like I needed to attend it to write this story, but I've been thinking a lot lately about high school and how long ago it was, and how I feel like I'm such a different person now. I feel like myself back then would not even recognize myself now. But at the same time, it's amazing because one smell can like trigger something in my brain and I can be right back in high school. Or a taste, or like a picture. It's so easy for me to get like sucked back into those memories, but at the same time I've blocked them off. I don't like to think about high school. It wasn't the worst time of my life, but it was up there. I don't like to think about it a lot. And if I find myself thinking about something negative that's related to high school, I just push it away. I thought about what life would be like if you tried really hard to escape your high school experience. If something bad happened and you tried really hard to separate yourself from it and have a life outside of it, and then you're forced to come back 10 years later and relive it. So that's where my story spawned from, that thought. Because it is something that I'm going through right now. Like, I'm going to be 30 next year, and I feel like that chapter in my life is closing, and to go back into it would be so, so weird. I'm someone who gets kind of emotional when I drive past places that used to be really significant to me. I think it's because I grew up all over the country and I don't see those places very often. But if I see a place that held significance in my life at one point, like, it really makes me emotional. It pulls me back into that time. So my story has already changed a little bit. I was going to write in multiple perspectives and have this friend group from this high school who have split up and gone different places. None of them have really been back for a significant amount of time to their hometown since high school. And they've all moved on and kind of blocked the experience out. That friend group is still going to be in the book, but I'm going to write from the perspective of someone who stayed. So this person went to the same high school, graduated with the same people that I was just talking about, but he did not experience the same thing they did. They had something tragic happen that kind of splintered the group. He stayed in town, kind of living a life that he wasn't very excited about, but at the same time, he didn't really want to do the work that's needed to escape his life, and so he just stayed. And he is the one who kind of gets a glimpse into this friend group and what has happened. So you're getting an outside perspective instead of getting all of those perspectives and all of the information at once. I hope that made sense. I'm really excited about this story. I do feel kind of guilty because I have a few unfinished stories right now and I feel like I should be working on those. But at the same time, it's a month, and to get another novel out of NaNoWriMo would be great. And to have options of what I'm going to work on next would be great. So who knows, this novel could turn out to be something that I'm really, really excited about and that I edit like last year, or it could turn out to be just a good writing experience. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. So just remember that coming up with that story idea is the easy part. And if you're having trouble coming up with a story idea, there is no shame in taking a story idea from somewhere like the NaNoWriMo forums or websites that are dedicated to helping you come up with story ideas. There is no shame in that because you are going to make the idea yours and it is going to be influenced by your own personal experiences and your style, and that's what's really important. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and took a little bit from it or thought about some things yourself related to story ideas. I need to do some more character planning before November. That's what I'm going to work on this year. I'm going to do a lot of character planning and not a lot of plot planning, plotting. And I think that will help. We'll see. It's an experiment. But I'm going to work on that before November 1st. So I'll be ready to go with all of my characters completely fleshed out. So again, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.